our video kind of froze.
Oh.
But we still have audio.
Oh, that's cool.
All right. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I plug it in and I hope it works.
Yeah. I mean, but I do have to say, like, it's great to see when people are moving in those and I have to say, like, it's hard to see when a relationship is falling apart, and sarcasm kills love. Like, it's not cute, it's not funny. The older I get, the more I'm like, sarcasm will kill a relationship, and even if the relationship continues onward, it's one that's seeped in misery.
It's just a weapon.
Yeah.
Like, everybody, too much of what we say and our motivations are just weaponized.
Yeah.
Especially with the people you should be caring about the most.
Yeah.
People are nicer to strangers than they are their own family members, and that irritates me to no end. I'm like, don't you get it? Like, that's who you have to be nice to more than anyone. Like, or else you end up what you just said. It's going to end in misery.
Sarcasm is cruelty just with a veneer of humor. And it's just cruelty. And it's hard, I would say, like, as a landlord, it's hard to see couples or tenants and the substance abuse problems. I had just actually had my first eviction in 8 years, which is, it's a great track record.
Well, that's exceptional.
But for me, it was a roller coaster. I actually hired an attorney, full court process, all the things. And, it was upsetting for me in part. You lose the money, obviously. It was for non-payment, but really it was a couple, an older, like a 50s, late 40s couple, and they fooled me, and they had very substantial substance abuse problems that is not always an easy thing to spot, and then they fought, like 3, 4, 5 a.m. scream. So it becomes then a quality of life issue for everybody else in the building because their quality of life. And, I addressed those things in writing, but there's like a limited, it's hard to evict someone because they're fighting. And when they stop paying their rent, it's an easy eviction. But even still, I was mad at myself because I was fooled by people who are very good at concealing, basically incredibly destructive behaviors. I was mortified because I haven't had police at a building as much ever like this. And like when I bought the various buildings, they were not the bougiest of tenants, let's put it that way. My neighbor actually said to me a few years ago, he was like, we're really glad you bought those buildings because we couldn't walk down that side of the street because we didn't know what was going to come flying out of a window.
Whoa.
Yeah. And I was like, whoa.
That's a great compliment.
It's a great compliment.
Like, wow, I'm doing something that's affecting people's lives.
Yeah.
Like, I am improving this neighborhood.
Yeah. But when you choose the wrong person, it's like dating the wrong person. Like, you're like, ugh.
You can swear as much as you want.
Oh well. See, if I start swearing, then I won't stop swearing.
That's how I go too.
Yeah.
But this is completely casual.
But I was like, I was mad at myself because I was fooled. I was embarrassed, and then there's going back to like negotiation and like this balance in being a landlord and like you can be the douchebag landlord. And there's consequences to that. And so this particular couple lived in a building that had this gorgeous 1890s marble fireplace and massive mirror, like 8-foot by 9 foot tall here. And I'm like, shoot, I'm going through an eviction. You know, we came to a negotiated agreement. I lost a lot of money. But I also got rid of them. And I was like, I have to keep my temper. There are nasty, nasty things I would love to be able to say. And I would not be wrong in saying them. But I have learned my lesson, because really all it takes is 30 seconds with a hammer, and the damage to your property, it would be very easy to destroy something that would cost me thousands of dollars to repair or replace, or is not replaceable. You know, a $4 bag of concrete poured down the toilet is $10,000 if you're lucky.
Don't give people any ideas.
I know. No one do that. It's really, there's a special place in hell. Also, you probably would go to jail. But, you know, those are the kinds of things that, like, it's very important in a conflict, stressful situation like that to keep your composure and keep your temper. And I learned that lesson a very hard way. I had a tenant who was a subletter of a subletter, which is why I don't allow subletters. So it wasn't someone I chose as a tenant. And they were month to month. And I was on vacation visiting my grandmother, who was in her 90s at the time. And he blew his circuit breakers. My maintenance guy was at church, couldn't get there right away, so he had to sit in the dark for a few hours. He was mad and called me up. Proceeds to vent his spleen on me. And he called me at a time when I was like, bitch, I'm on vacation.
This is grandma time.
I'm like, I don't want to hear it. And I was mad and I yelled at him.
Did you say that bit? You said bitch? Or that it came out different words, but that's the message?
But I was pissed. And then
Right.
I got back and I was still pissed. And I was like, he's month to month, just give him 30 days notice. Let it be done. Well, he got his letter. He was like, this is retaliation. And I was like, 30 days notice. No, you're month to month. 30 days. And then I cracked. And I was like, yeah, bitch, it is retaliation because you're an asshole. And you yelled at me and mother.
Ooh, you did it.
I did. I lost my temper. And he's like, fine.
You cracked.
I'll be out in 30 days. Fine. And I was like, great.
But you gave him what he wanted. Oh.
No, and he moved. He was out in 30 days. He didn't trash the place. And I was like, sweet. Ha, ha, ha. I'm so tough. I'm so... About a month later, I got my water bill. This building normally is like $400 a quarter. $5,000 water bill. Because what he did is he went to work every day. Popped on the kitchen's tap. And he let it run. All day. All night. He let it run. He let that water run. And I wasn't in the building. I didn't hear it. Like, no one else. There was like, hey, it sounds like there's water running. You know, I wasn't. And you use the water. It doesn't matter if you're filling your swimming pool or like really hydrating or your tenant's pissed at you and has turned on the water. You use the water. You pay for the water. And I learned my lesson. I was like, I didn't let him save face. I had to be right. I had to win. And I lost. And, you know, that's part of the, like, coming back to the conflict resolution piece of things. It's like you always have to step back and be like, every relationship when you're a landlord or in business is not a short-term relationship. It's not a one-off. People refer to you. Your reputation is really key. And even if it's a one-time, there's still ways people can, who you think you have all the power as the landlord. Tenants, even when the law is not super tenant friendly, there are plenty of ways that they can wreak revenge and level the playing field. And it's so much of it is about self-control and understanding the psychology of people.
Aren't people fascinating? Like, what kind of person... This is a lifelong obsession with one of my many lifelong obsessions is what motivates people and what is going on in their head when they're doing something that they know is wrong. They know they're causing damage and putting literal and figurative damage, and just putting out hate. Like, he turned that water on every day,
right,
just out of hate.
Right.
And how could you do that? Like, it is about the winning, right? Like, so many people expect conversation, every interaction, no matter what it is about winning. I have to win something, and I have to assume that you're also trying to win. It's one of my big problems is I don't try to win. I really love just finding out, let's get over here together. Let's both try, let's walk this path together, and let's figure out what the truth is and be reasonable about it. I have such a hard time talking to family and friends still. I'm like, stop trying to win. And I'm like helping people work out their relationships too. I'm like, don't do that.
Right.
Like, I would talk to that dude, be like, don't do that, man. Like,
right,
what's in it for you? What's in it for you? Because you're going to walk away and you're both losers. Emily's going to lose because she's hit with a big water bill. So you're putting negative out in the world by doing that. And also you walking away knowing that you affected somebody's life negatively. Over what? And you lose too. Like, it tears away your soul. Like, it hurts. Like,
right,
that's what evil is. And so just thinking of what... And the problem is we see it so much. Like, it's so human. It's ingrained in us.
It's part of... like, one of the things that I learned in my legal training is you separate the people from the problem. And when it so that you can work on the problem as a separate issue. So, in this case with this tenant that turned on the water, I made the problem, i.e., he was disrupting my vacation. He was upset about having to wait. And rather than making it and resolving the problem being like, let's talk about the timing of this conversation. This isn't a good time. And also helping him better understand, like, if you owned a house and you blew all your circuit breakers and you didn't know how to trip them, turn them back on, and you had to call an electrician is not going to get there in 15 minutes. Or if they do, that will be reflected in their bill. Like, there was an opportunity to a learning moment there that I could have helped this particular tenant become a more informed potential homeowner down the road. But instead I chose to, be angry and
to play his game. That's what I meant when I said you gave him what he wanted. Like, he wanted a reason to justify just turning the heat up, like being a dick.
Yeah.
And reason like, well, what? Oh, no holds barred. Guess what? I get to win because I know stuff she doesn't know. Right. I get to hurt her in ways she doesn't know.
Right.
And if
when you create someone, you cast someone as a character, as a villain, then by punishing a villain, then you're doing the righteous thing. So if I'm the evil,
straw man landlord,
selfish, greedy landlord who just yells at people and bullies them, then and you're the innocent tenant who's being thrown out of his home, because he dared to complain once, and you don't have any power and you don't have the money to fight in court, how are you going to put this evil person in their place without hurting anyone? I'm going to turn the water on. It's a totally reasonable story to tell yourself. It's not irrational. And in some ways, it's not cruel. There are certainly things he could have done that would have endangered the safety and health of other people in the building. All he did was cost me money and taught me. But what he really did is he taught me a super important lesson. I did not put myself in that person's shoes and didn't listen to the story that he was telling himself. And that's part of like as a landlord, you're a repeat player. So you can anticipate some of the problems that people are going to run into. But you also have the opportunity to develop the self-control and ability to step back and do problem analysis. And that's fascinating. To me, that's fascinating. That's part of the reason why I'm like, I want to be able to manage my own stuff, not have a property manager, because the people are what's fun. Like, keeping buildings alive is fun, but the people are what's fun, and what you learn about people is fun. And like, it's a great gift to be able to be there with people in their lives. And, you know, I have a lot of folks who are done with college, but it's before they sort of take that next giant leap, you know, into owning their own house or like, so it's this fun period of time. They don't have kids. They don't have obligations other than work. And they're sort of, but they have a sense of themselves and they're doing neat stuff. And I just get to be present there. And then I have people whose type of work, they either travel a lot, so they don't want to deal with a house. And so they're bringing back all kinds of cool information and insights and, you know, and some people just want to come home and like not be bothered, and that's fine. Like, but it's, to be present with people is like, collecting rent and like maintaining buildings is one thing, but like really the fun part of being a landlord is to just be like able to be part of people's lives, and answer the door in your bathrobe, you know, with like 3 cats walking around. I mean, like,
you're like a for the build, like you mentioned the building part. The buildings part is cool, and then there's the people part. It's like you're a steward of the buildings.
Totally.
Like you're just carrying them on. You're breathing, pushing some life back into them, doing a civic duty there. But the personal end, the people, is like a little treat you get.
It is, and it's like, you know, if you own a store and you sell things, if you own a restaurant and you feed people, you know, like you're giving them something that adds sustenance to their life, you know, but every business owner is a pass through, you know, like all this stuff just passes through you. And I think there's very few industries where like, you know, you bump up and it's a stopping point where like the item, you know, it's not a good metaphor, but, you know, what kind of experience people have as they pass through your life, I think that's ultimately within my control. I have control over how much do I want to give, and what does that experience feel like while they're here. And some people move through very quickly, some people very slowly, and in the meantime, you know, these physical buildings, you are steward is the right word. And I have one building which is an old convent on Washington Park, and I
live right there. I know it.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I live right on Second Street, right at the corner.
So sorry about the drama that used to be there. Sorry about that. That was fairly mortifying. But that building, you know, is one that's been, there are a lot of people who tell me stories about like going to Catholic school at St. Mary's and being naughty, and the nuns dragging them over to the convent and making them polish woodwork, or, you know, beating the crap out of them.
Some kind of Catholic bullshit.
Yeah. So many young men in their like 60s seem to have been very naughty. As youths. But, you know, when I bought that building, I was like, I am not the owner of this building. I am the caretaker of this building for a period of time, which hopefully will encompass most of my life. But, you know, you have an obligation to this brick and mortar thing, but then you also have an obligation to the people that are held in it. So it's like, it's awesome. And people are always like, oh, you own so much stuff. And I'm like, it's like having a lot of kids. You know, you have to kind of keep them fed and clothed and like alive. And it's a great blessing. And sometimes you're like, head desk. Like, why am I doing this?
You have no choice but to do it. It's who you are.
It is.
Like, it's a blessing and a curse.
I know. I could never go back to a desk job at this point.
It's soul-sucking, and that's part of my curse, too. It's a blessing and a curse to think the way I think. I'm like, oh, okay, good. I love having conversations with people. I'm friendly, and I really enjoy this stuff. Mm-hmm. But, man, what do I do with this? Right. And it's like, sometimes it feels like a curse. And same way, like people look at your thing, you own so many buildings, but they're only seeing that facade, so to speak, right? Mm-hmm. Like, oh, there's Emily, the landlord. By the way, we need a new term for landlord. I don't like landlord. I never have. It's so antiquated. We need a newer, nicer, friendlier term. Like that dude who turned the water on and jacked it up. He's like, fuck that landlord. Yeah. Like it needs to be a nicer, softer term because landlord. That goes back to like British common law crap, right? Like where those
it goes all. It was
the way back. It was tyrannical.
It goes.
And like it or not, you're the man and you're a tyrant.
I know. Like,
by using that word, you need a new word.
When the guillotines come out, well, the word won't change. I mean, like the emotions, the things that people don't like about, i.e., owing somebody a shit ton of money,
and they are the Lord.
Well, and. You know, like, that's the thing. You know, it's like I was raised by, my people have been farmers for forever. And land has a very strong effect on you. And you have an obligation to maintaining land. And if you're a farmer, you know, you need to keep it alive and keep the things that live on it alive. And, you know, a lord has an obligation. It's a two-way street. And I think, you know, the tenants of the Lord forget this. The Lord has an obligation to protect them. And that is going all the way back historically. Like, they pay rent in exchange for a safe place to live and protection. And when you're safe and you're paying rent, you feel like you're not getting great value for your money, right? Because you're not seeing anything. It's when shit goes stray and there is a war and you want your landlord, your lord of that land, to be able to mount up and fuck shit up to defend you. And I will. Like, literally, if push came to shove, I mean, I would be like on the roof throwing bricks at the mob if they're coming after my tenants. I mean, I have, like, looked at which sub-basements can be nuclear fallout shelters and tried to figure out, like, how many people, how much...
Which ones?
Yeah. Be like, what are the...
what value are they going to bring to this
new
colony?
No, like...
In our basement?
No, like, what kind of projects can we do while we're down here?
Because... You need some artists. Bring down those artists.
Well, everybody has to have busy hands so they don't kill each other.
Yeah.
Or start fucking each other.
Sorry, yes. Sorry, Netflix and chill, dude. You're not coming because we need people that do shit.
Yeah.
You know, talking about that, the responsibility of the lord, the landlord, and the tenants also have the responsibility, and just, you know, your other issues, the nonstop, never-ending issues you have and are going to continue to have. I read a really good phrase the other day, and I'm like, I wrote it down. I'm like, that's nice. It's called criticize. It is criticize with gratitude. Mm-hmm. Like, you talk about, sure, you can criticize some things. Okay, your circuit breaker blew out. I'm going to keep going back to that person because that person, that's a fascinating situation for me. Yeah. But it's very common, that type of thing. And he wanted to criticize, but he also didn't appreciate what you were already providing. Right. what civilization has provided is giving you the ability to criticize, but have some gratitude about it. Don't get on the phone and start blowing up. Oh, blah 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 blah. I got 3 hours with no cell or no power, whatever it is. Like, appreciate that this exists, because this wasn't like this for the majority of time. Even 150 years ago, who had running water?
Yeah.
Like, not many of us.
Yeah.
Like, that didn't happen. So, and electricity, get out of here. We're talking less than 100 years ago.
Well, and this is the advantage of, like, again, like, having that context. And, like, so for me, like, circling back around to, like, the bigger idea of Troy and why I bought here and set my business here is because I was able to have that bigger context of what does a city that has, like, serious urban problems, serious, like, segregation, serious economic problems, what does that look like? And, coming from Milwaukee, and then, and what does reinvention of a city look like? And my hometown is way poorer than, like, way fewer resources than Troy has access to. And what can they do with that? And so, like, coming here, and it's super easy to just, like, ignore the naysayers who are like, nothing will ever be good, because they don't have context. They don't have any like, you have to leave and see a place, like, through fresh eyes. And there will come a point in time when there's another generation of people who come to Troy and are doing different things, and I'll probably be like the old grouchy person that's like, back in the 2000s,
but at least you're aware and conscious that you might become that person, which may in turn prevent you from becoming that person.
Yeah.
Like, if you catch yourself saying something like that, and you're like, oh, crap. You don't be that person, because if you've already caught yourself, you've mentioned a couple things already, things that you've caught that you've done. You're like, oh, don't do that. Don't do that anymore. That was a lesson.
Yeah.
Being aware, it's self-awareness.
Yeah, and I mean, like.
But yeah, there are so many naysayers.
Sure, it's super easy.
It's so easy, but to never offer solutions. It's so easy to say that'll never work, because there's not many visionary people.
Yeah.
And.
Well, to be a visionary is to see what is not there.
And that's abstract, as you said, abstract thinking, which it is rare, because we can't have, it should be rare too. Like, we can't have too many abstract thinkers.
But Troy is a city built by and on the backs of abstract thinkers, because it's a city that's been constantly, it creates technology, it creates new ideas. So there's that stream that's a default setting in Troy. It's why it's a city of eccentrics and nerds. And there's inherent tension, because it's also, as a manufacturing city, it also had the people who took those abstract ideas and turned them into real concrete things. And doesn't require it. So to some degree, it does require some abstract thinking, but once you figure it out, that's manufacturing. Now it's being done by robots, and like 125 years ago, it was done by children. So, like, that's there. That you see that tension, and that tension's reflected in the architecture. You can see the dividing line in Troy between the housing for the people who manufactured stuff, who made it, and the housing for the people who created the concepts. And that's a real dividing line. And those dividing lines in Troy are part of the fabric of the city. And it's different coming from a farming community, because there's not that, there can still be the abstract thinking. You need to think about what crop is going to be, and what your thing you're creating with your animals and your land. you are doing that, but then you're also, as a farmer, doing the physical labor that brings that to fruition. So it's there's overlap. You have to be both an entrepreneur and a producer at the same time as a farmer. And so it's why, like, it's a very different mindset. And as you specialize, in a manufacturing based city, you segregate those two things. And suburbia is so weird because it's like the people that are in between, but they don't create anything. Like, I'm not a fan.
I have to give you a book recommendation,
okay,
in case you've not read it. Tribe by Sebastian Junger.
Oh, I haven't read it.
My God, I'm probably gonna have to read it a third time now. I've read it twice, and it's so much about a lot of that. Like, you are the tribal leader of your little, but it's a lot about suburbia just being, like you've said it several times, and I've always felt that. I've always felt empty when we go visit family and friends that live in the suburbs. Like, it's a real a real physical feeling I get when I pull into a neighborhood and all the houses look the same and all the yards look the same and there's nobody outside. Like, it's a real physical feeling that disgust.
It's very lonely.
I feel
very,
lonely.
very lonely.
Yeah, I feel very lonely. And it's no good. That's a good book.
And it doesn't, like, I think one of the great things about Troy is that it has pushed my social skills. I mean, coming from rural Wisconsin, let's just say in terms of diversity meant, which synod of Lutheran are you? Because there were like 5 different varieties.
Lutheran.
Yeah.
I'm glad we crapped on a little bit on Catholics too, because as a Lutheran, it's really easy to crap on Catholics.
Well, see, and we were Catholics, so we were like the minority religion.
Oh, you were?
In the super
You were
Scandinavian.
the Catholics?
No, dude, I literally, I grew up so surrounded. Everyone's last name ended in son. I know a guy whose name is Thor Thorson. I am
Thor Thorson.
Shit you not. He's a super great guy.
I love Vikings.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I have to admit, people in New York are really small.
Yes.
They're really little. They're really little. Sorry, guys. But you are.
That's those Scandinavians. It's the fish. It's all the herring. All the herring, pickled herring they eat.
But I mean, it's I didn't know any black people until I was in college. There weren't any. They just, I knew more Amish.
Yeah, why would you live in Wisconsin if you're a black dude? It's cold as hell.
They're just not in rural Wisconsin. There's a lot of Latinos, a lot of Hmong, a lot of Amish, and a lot of German, Irish, and Scandinavians. And so it's pretty freaking lily white.
Yeah.
And
how about diversity of thought though? Did you meet a lot of people that a lot of smart people, or was it mostly country bumpkin folk? Was it kind of we are conservative, we all vote this way, we all think this way, we do this?
My hometown was rife with hippies, so I think there was maybe a little bit of weed smoked. So ideas wise, it was really interesting. In fact, one of the oldest Waldorf schools in the country is from my hometown, from the early 80s. It started in the early 80s, and one of my high school classmates started a Waldorf college as well. So it's diversity of thought was there.
Well, if they're letting a high school girl design a whole new marquee for the movie theater, that makes me think, all right, there's some idea people there. Yeah, there's some visionary people. They're go do it, kid. Go nuts.
Well, and the ability that the fact that you could interact with generations of people, the fact that you would let a high schooler be on an executive board, is, and just be yeah, of course. And I wasn't the only one. I had 2 other friends in high school, high school classmates of mine that were on the board as well. So, that diversity of age was there. But for me, moving to Troy has been it's been the opportunity to have diversity of race and friends, and the guys that I work most closely with are black, and it's been super interesting to see how as a white woman hanging out with black dudes all day, how we get, like, collectively, how we get treated and looked at by people that don't know us. You know, and to apprentice under, and like, I basically spent 10 years apprenticing on learning how to do a trade, you know, coming from someone with a terminal degree, and, you know, my family was farmers, but they subsidized their farming habit with, like, medicine and law, and so it's a weird bridge.
Wow.
Yeah, we've always had like weird, like a foot in multiple worlds.
Oh, that's so fun to live like that.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's really interesting. I mean, it kind of makes you an outsider in all of the groups.
Wow, that's me.
And you know, like, so it's been very, for me, I've learned a lot about I've learned a lot about racism. I've learned a lot about discrimination against immigrants. I've learned, like, I've seen things, like, up close and personal, and been able to, like, just be straight told, like, oh yeah, that's how it is. That's how you get treated. And I was like, no, what? And they're like, oh, honey.
And you're still learning, and which is great. It doesn't feel good to learn. I know you have to be a person who loves to learn.
Do.
You love saying, okay, show me something I might not want to know.
But it's also been really super great. It's also been super great for the guys, because I'm like, this is like what I don't know. Like my tenants with the substance abuse problem, you know, they were like, they said to me, they were like, oh, they're hanging out with the wrong kind of people. And I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, marijuana dealers? Like, not nice people? Like, what does this mean? I'm like, like, banned from the rock. Does that mean they drink too much? Like, what's...
Whoa.
You know, I'm like...
I never liked that phrase, hanging out with the wrong people. I choose
banned
to think...
from in Troy, I would say banned from the rock is a great way of saying hanging out with the wrong crowd.
But no, I think more terms of you might be the wrong person.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a big proponent of self-responsibility, so I don't like to outsource people's responsibilities. Like, you're hanging out with the wrong people.
They were the wrong people.
No, they are. Yeah, if you're personally banned from the rock.
But, like, I knew they were, like, I knew these tenants had problems, but I would not be able to tell the difference in, like, what particular substance was the most problematic. But, you know, like, the guys that work for me lived in the New York City in the late 80s and 90s, and, like, Brooklyn. And they're like, oh, honey, that's X, Y, and Z. And I'm like, you really have to tell the white girl who's super white, like, you have to just be like, you can't, like, hint around. You have to be like, honey, this is what they're doing. And then I'm like, oh, okay.
Wow, now I know what that looks like. That's not just on TV. That's not in a newspaper.
This is part of my apprenticeship. This is part of, like, this is a huge gap in my education. Like, I wasn't exposed to this. I know what alcohol looks like and alcoholism.
Right.
You know, that I know what like serious potheads look like. And, you know, beyond that, like, that's...
Pills are tough.
Pills are very tough.
That's something, speaking of bringing up Florida again, when I moved to Florida, I had no ideas about pills. No clue that pills were so rampant. Because this was 2005, 2006, 2005 is basically when I moved there. And that's when all these pill pushing factories were coming about. Yeah. I had a cousin who would buy a bag. Everybody was a pill dealer, like OxyContin. He bought a bag of it for like $500, and then he'd resell them like he was a pill dealer. And I'm like, what? And I would never eat, like, marijuana, whatever. Well, that's not even. I don't even like calling it. It's a freaking plant. Like, let it be. It's an awesome plant, by the way. But stuff like crack, heroin, alcoholism, like, you see that. and you could smell it, and sometimes you have to burn it, and you could tell somebody lets you know. But when people are popping pills, man, you have no idea.
Yep.
No clue. That's what I learned. I was like, oh, you guys are on pills all the time.
Yep.
All of the time. And I have no clue. And when they wouldn't get their pills, that's when you would see that there was a problem. Like, oh, this is a problem now.
And like for me, you know, sort of apprenticing into the trades, learning by doing, and as a woman, you know, you're an outsider on many different levels. But I really am genuinely interested. So like people just teach me, learning about like the different cultures within different trades and like different, you know, roofers have their particular set of uppers and downers that they prefer, and there are different personality traits that pop up in different types of trades. You know, plumbers have a certain proclivities. Electricians, bless their hearts, are the prima donnas. They really are.
The prima donnas of the subcontractor world.
Of
the tradesmen.
Hey man, like
wow.
They're
fucking with electricity all day.
They tangle with death every day. They know what it's like to not have electricity, and they know what they can burn your house down. Great power, great responsibility.
Yeah, you're right, because you can't be.
But
there's several trades you can't be. None of them you can be dishonest in, but especially electrician. Like you'll kill people.
If
you suck or you don't do the job right.
Yep.
Or you screw people or don't do the job at all. Yeah, you kill people.
Yeah. Or yourself. You kill yourself in really nasty ways.
I love linemen. I've always loved linemen growing up. Watching the dudes with the spikes on their boots and climbing up power. Yep. I haven't seen one in forever. But because now they have the buckets that raise them. But I love those guys. Like the leather straps, they would lean back and like do their magic up there.
Oh yeah,
I love linemen.
And it's so and like to hear some of their horror stories. Like a good chunk of South Troy a couple summers ago was shut down because a raccoon had gotten like into a transformer, and they were like, "Yep, we gotta scrape out the roasted raccoon." And I was like, is this common? They're just National Grid guys and you're just shooting the shit with them. And they're like, oh yeah, it happens all the time. Squirrels, raccoons. And I'm like, interesting. But you can tell people who like people who love what they do talk about it all the time. I mean, I've had the Department of Public Utilities guys come to change a water meter, and you know, they can knock boom. Like they can be in and out of there in 2 minutes. But, you know, we start chatting, and I learn more about the infrastructure of Troy and all the crazy stuff. There's, like, a water line that's made out of oak pipe. There's, like, every kind of... Oh, it's amazing. It broke, actually, and they had to replace it. And there's one company left in the world that's in Germany that makes it. And there was...
Exciting.
There's a piece in Jersey, and they were able to get it back up because it would have cost... It was... cheaper to do that than to change all the fittings. It was cheaper to replace a water line in Troy with one made out of wood.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's old infrastructure. And these guys have seen everything. And they love to talk about it. They just want an audience.
If I decide to be mayor in a couple years, the mayor of Troy, one of the first things I'm going to do is go down in the sewers with the sewer guys here. Because I want to see what's underneath there.
You really don't have to wait.
Would they let me anyways? So like, hey man.
If you don't ask, people can't say yes.
You're right. Maybe I just got to meet one of these guys you're talking about. Please take me in the sewer with you. I just want to see. I want to see this 18th century or 19th century shit. Like, not literally, but probably will. Mm-hmm. But just, I need to see those old stones.
Yeah.
And bricks. And I just want to see that
problem.
And now that wood you're telling me about.
That's buried again. And once if it's not exposed to oxygen, it'll hold up. It'll hold up a really long time.
Wow. Do you know how old the original one was?
It was over 100 years, I think. Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating. Like, I feel like I'm able to have my foot in a lot of different worlds, and and people let me in But it's also lonely because you're never fully one of them. When you're a landlord, you're never totally friends with your tenants because they have to pay you.
There's still a wall.
There's always a wall.
Don't you hate having to charge people for shit? I hate it. I hate it because the only reason I charge people for, accounting most of my life and multiple other things is like, I'm only charging you because other people charge me for stuff. Like, I don't really, like, I want to just have no walls. I want to have honest and really let me in.
It used to be more, it bothered me more because I felt like it wasn't nice. But what I realized is it's a really unemotional way to show respect for each other. The money that you spend, your time is worth money. And this math helped me make better business decisions. I was like, give yourself anyone that works for themselves, give yourself an hourly rate. Like, what do you charge a client? If you had to pay someone else to do this, what would they charge you? That gives you, and then it helps you discern whether or not you should delegate it to someone who's less expensive, or when you need to pull the plug on someone that's sucking too much of your time. You're like, dear tenant who's been sucking my emotional time, talking to me about stuff I don't really want to talk about, like, what's the rent worth? Have they used up more than their rent's worth of my time? And that's, I've found that's helpful, especially like for like people I know who, are kids, and maybe they have kids and they need help maybe cleaning their house or something. And I'm like, but don't want to shell out the money to do it. And I'm like, look, man, I don't have kids, but I'm pretty sure like babysitting is like $10 an hour per kid and if you can get someone in to come and like help you cover that and it's cheaper, like, do the math. My sister, like, I have this conversation with my sister a lot, and because she has a hard time asking for help, and for me, as someone who's independent and likes doing stuff myself, it was a way of like abstracting again and doing a better job of asking for help and delegating. And
did you discover people like to be asked for help?
They love it.
They love help. People love help. It's in our DNA. Yeah. We wouldn't have the civilization that we have if it wasn't programmed in us to help one another.
Yeah. And I've also found that, like, for my tenants, like, I've given them control over doing gardening and doing certain types of projects, and that ownership has benefited me, but it's also benefited them, and it builds that community. And I think that that's one of the great things about Troy is that, again, the scale is such that you have human interaction. You're not in your car all the time. Yes, add the 20 minutes. It's the Troy 20. Just add 20 minutes to whatever the hell you're trying to do. 30. The longer you stay here, add more time, because and
you're gonna meet more people, and they're gonna want to talk, and you're not gonna deny them that.
No,
I know you're not.
No,
I don't deny them that. I love talk. Woo! That's what we're doing right now.
I know.
This makes me happy beyond. Do you want to wrap this up? I didn't even ask you how long we had.
We probably should, because your poor listeners are like, they're not going to stop.
No, and I have a large cache of questions that I would pull out from something you said in probably an hour, 2 hours. I don't even know how long we're doing this, but yeah, I need to reserve them because we'll just keep going.
Yeah.
All right, Emily Menn, this has been a blast. Come live in Troy.
liveintroyny.com is my website for my business, DHR Properties, because that's what I want people to do. I want you to live in Troy, New York. .com.
All right, bravo. Thanks again, Emily.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
It's fun.